Halloween is coming fast, and at Fantasy Sabers we have put together special Halloween bundles. Each bundle gives you a high quality, fully customizable saber with a belt clip and your own Jedi or Sith robes. Order before October 10th for guaranteed delivery.
What if Darth Malgus trained Anakin Skywalker? Let's start the story in the year 3693 BBY in the Old Republic. A young Anakin Skywalker was born on the barren world of Tatooine into slavery. His life was hard, rough, and he was forced to work day and night under the harsh heat of the twin suns. Anakin thought this was all he would make of his life, but it all changed one day when the Sith came to Tatooine. They had business with Anakin's slave master, as Skywalker sat, hidden away in the corner of the shop, as he watched the two Sith walk in. In Anakin's eyes they were ginormous, warriors draped in sleek black, and he admired them. He wanted to be just like them. As they were completing the deal, one of the Sith looked directly at Anakin. He felt something different about the boy. Normally, he wouldn't take any notice of a slave, but the Force told him there was more to this child. He turned back to the slave master and included Anakin in the deal, and they took young Skywalker with them. Anakin was ecstatic. He was taken away from Tatooine in their mighty starship, but Anakin didn't have a clue what he was getting into. They traveled for a couple of hours until they reached the barren world of Droman Kaas, the ancient world of the Sith. They opened the door to exit, and the Sith gestured for Anakin to leave. He does, and the door closes behind him, and now he's isolated. He looks forward to see a hooded figure standing at the entrance of a stone column, and Skywalker follows him inside. They begin walking through a route of stone tunnels, but they walk in silence as Anakin begins to hear voices echoing around the corridors. The hooded figure in front of Anakin stops, handing him a torch and gestures for him to continue down. Anakin spent minutes going down the path until he reaches the bottom, where he saw an empty circular room with 8 hidden figures in a circle formation. They motion for Anakin to take the center, and he sits down and collapses to unconsciousness. He begins to get visions of his past and present all around him, of all the pain he's experienced and hatred because of it. Anakin wakes up after what feels like an eternity and looks to his left to see a man sitting in a chair next to the bed, who explains where he is. He tells Anakin that he's been chosen to become a student of the dark side, but not just any student. He's been chosen to train specifically at the Sith Academy created for Sith Masters. Anakin began his training. The academy is brutal, and the training is unforgiving. Those too weak to complete their training will die trying. Only power is respected at the academy, and Anakin has plenty of this. He is one of the strongest in his class, killing many other students over the years who challenged him. He is a favorite to the teachers, as he is skilled in almost every part of his training. Lightsaber combat, Sith alchemy, he mastered it all and fast. During his time at the temple, Anakin got close to one other student, Atroxa. She was a Twi'lek female Sith, and she and Anakin began a secret relationship together. However, after many years of training, Anakin completed his time at the academy, and the Sith Masters came to choose their apprentices. There were 12 graduate students, and only 8 Masters came to take on apprentices. Anakin was very sought after, as most of the Masters had taken an interest in him. However, Anakin connected with only one, a Master with intense power and a deep level of fury that matched Anakin's energy. The Sith that killed Nani Zo, Darth Malgus. Malgus offered for Anakin to become his apprentice, and Skywalker accepted, now being dubbed the title of Darth Invictus, a title Malgus gave him for the unconquered and unbeaten. At this point in time, the galaxy was at war. The Sith Empire versus the Jedi's Republic. The Dark Council had given Malgus the task to control parts of the Outer Rim, and together alongside Skywalker, they began their purges in the Outer Rim territory. Instantly, Anakin and Malgus clicked. Skywalker still had a lot to learn, and Malgus would teach him the intimacy of the dark side. But as Skywalker won battle after battle with Malgus, the experience he gained was converted directly into his power. Their fighting styles matched, using brutal, powerful strikes to take down opponents, but also utilizing the delicacy of Sith alchemy when necessary. A specific achievement of Anakin and Malgus was their success on Alderaan. Together they brought the planet to its knees before Jedi Satele Shan and local resistance began to fight back. Satele almost got the better of Malgus, but Anakin took over in the fight, saving his master and cut down Satele Shan. Satele was the descendant of Darth Revan, so this was no minor victory and didn't go unnoticed by the Dark Council. Next, Anakin and Malgus were tasked to capture Ord Radama alongside Sith Lord Darth Venamal and his new apprentice Darth Atoxa. Finally, Anakin was reunited with his lover as they fought together to capture the planet. Malgus supported Anakin and Atoxa's relationship, especially since Malgus had his own lover, a Twi'lek Elena Dune, who he fell in love with after the Alderaan campaign. Together the four Sith coordinated the assault on the planet, engaged the Jedi on the surface, and commanded the Sith fleet against the Republic warships. The campaign was 4 months long, but they were successful, and Lord Adras was sent in with reinforcements and resources to hold the planet. After the victory, Malgus and Anakin's stock had risen in the Empire. The Dark Council summoned Malgus in front of them and gave him a new assignment: to lead the sacking on Coruscant in 1 month's time. Malgus was ecstatic. This is what he had always wanted. He discussed with Anakin and Darth Venamal, a new close ally and friend, and together they planned the siege. 1 month later, the campaign began. Anakin and Malgus marched towards the temple and cut down the guards. They entered as Jedi jumped down to greet them, sensing the dark side in the two Sith, but they kept walking forward. They were not scared. They stopped in the center as they were met by Jedi Master Zallo. The Jedi were confused why the Sith had come in by themselves, that surely the two of them would be no match for the temple. But they were mistaken. Through the atmosphere came a stolen Republic shuttle heading straight for the Jedi temple. The Jedi looked up in confusion as the shuttle burst through the foyer doors, taking out the pillars one by one until it stopped behind Anakin and Malgus. All of the Jedi had their lightsabers ignited at this point, and the door to the shuttle opened to reveal 50 Sith warriors, crimson lightsabers ready. The temple erupted into battle as the Jedi and Sith fought. Malgus' greatest fight was against Jedi Master Zallo, whom he successfully cut down, signaling the Sith victory. When the Sith victory was essentially guaranteed, Anakin took a portion of their forces to the Senate, and he personally killed Supreme Chancellor Baruchin as the Sith Armada had begun their bombardment on Coruscant. Meanwhile, as the sacking of Coruscant was taking place, the Sith had deceived the Jedi and led a peace negotiation summit on Alderaan, and knew that with the capture of Coruscant, they could use this as a bargaining chip. After the temple was sacked, Malgus joined Anakin, Venamal, and Atoxa in the Senate offices. However, an Imperial dreadnought had arrived at a hyperspace, and from it, Darth Angral and Andras boarded a ship and joined them on Coruscant's surface. However, Angral had bad news for Malgus. He told them all that the Dark Council had ordered them to stop the attack on Coruscant, that the planet was to be used as leverage in the current negotiations with the Jedi on Alderaan. Malgus and Anakin were infuriated by this, as this went against the entire nature of the Sith and Empire, believing Coruscant deserved to be sacked. But what surprised Anakin and Malgus the most was that Angral commanded that Malgus, Anakin, Venamal, and Atoxa had been summoned in front of the Emperor and Darth Council, but he couldn't tell them why. This did not sit right with Malgus. Together they had just taken control of Coruscant and destroyed the Jedi at the heart of their stronghold. They should be praised for their victory, not dragged in front of the council like naughty childs to their parents. Something was wrong, and the Force touched Malgus, giving him a warning that to comply with Angral to go to the Dark Council would confirm his defeat. It made sense to Malgus. The Dark Council were afraid of his, Anakin, Venamal, and Atoxa's power. They were a force to be reckoned with, and now were a threat to the Council. Malgus looked directly at Anakin, and Skywalker was on the same page. Malgus turned to Darth Angral, refusing his commands, stating that Coruscant doesn't belong to the Emperor or Dark Council, but rather himself, Darth Malgus, and Darth Invictus, and their own Sith forces. Angral and Adras flashed their blades, telling Malgus that what he says is treason to the Emperor himself, and Malgus smirks, telling Darth Adras, so be it. Lightsabers were drawn in an instant, and Anakin sent Sith lightning at the two. Andras was hit, while Darth Angral blocked, but Malgus was too fast, dodging under the lightning and slashed across, his blade entering Angral's chest cavity, killing him. was Anakin threw his lightsaber directly at the stunned Idris, ending his life. Anakin, Malgus, Venimal and Atorxa look at each other. This was a big moment. They had defied the Dark Council and engaged in active treason. They went back to the Jedi Temple to group up with the remaining 30 Sith warriors. Malgus stood atop a piece of rubble, Anakin by his side, and addressed his troops. He told them all what had happened. The Dark Council had summoned him, planning to punish him for his victory here. He asked everyone whether this is how victory should be treated. Is this what the Sith have become? Mere political warriors who seek to take down those power they fear? Malgus told them all that they fought back. They killed those tasked with bringing them in, and with this, declared that this tyranny from the Dark Council will be their last. Malgus proclaims he, alongside Anakin, will begin the new Sith Empire, the empire that respects strength and strength alone, and will fight back against the hypocrisy of the Sith Council. Cheers erupted through the halls. Malgus had been careful with the Sith he'd chosen to accompany him, a lot of them having served under Malgus before and had some loyalty to him. Malgus takes command of his forces, as well as Republic ships on the planet, and uses them as his own fleet. They don't waste any time, and lead their forces towards Corellia. They led a complete and all-out assault against the planet, catching Darth Aho, a member of the Dark Council, off guard. They destroyed 2 of his Star Destroyers, whilst Anakin and Malgus successfully boarded his command ship. They tore through the defences until they reached the hull, where Aho was waiting for them. Aho ignited his blade and engaged the 2 Sith in battle, but this was futile against Anakin and Malgus, who successfully disarmed him and brought him to his knees. Malgus pointed his saber at his throat, commanding Aho to reveal where the Emperor was. In the Empire, no one heard of the Emperor very often. The only time he was mentioned was when the Dark Council summoned Sith Masters and coordinated their forces. They would simply state that the Emperor commanded them, the Dark Council, to carry out his bidding. But no one knew where he was located. But Malgus needed to find out, but Aho did not budge, stating that he would never tell Malgus where the Emperor was. Malgus looked at Anakin, who acted straight away. Skywalker started casting a Sith spell. It was old alchemy, but green mist slowly seeped into Aho's head through his ears. Through this, Anakin started to take control of Aho's memories, who screamed in opposition, attempting to put up his own defenses. But this was futile. Anakin was simply too strong. He searched for the answers and found that the Emperor Vitiate was indeed on Droman Kass this entire time. Aho was executed, and Anakin and Malgus took over his entire fleet and resources. Malgus specifically attacked Aho because he wanted his stealth armada, a secret Imperial fleet equipped with cloaking technology that allowed Malgus to go ahead with his future plans. Through Aho's Imperial dreadnought, he activated a communications channel connected to every Sith ship in their empire and broadcasted to them all. He stated that, fellow Sith, citizens of the Empire, too long the strength of the Empire had been beholden to the infighting of the Dark Council. Sith, children of Sith, and warriors everywhere, I declare a new empire, open to all those who long for conquest, freedom from inhibition, and the right to follow their passions. The Dark Council is dissolved. Those who wish for me, Darth Malgus and Darth Invictus, the destroyers of Coruscant and Jedi, to cast aside your titles and let us lead you to victory. Those who will not, including Emperor Vitiate, prepare to face our stealth armada. Cheers reverberated through the HoloNet, and thus the Empire was thrust into civil war. The Great Schism had just begun, as many in the Empire declared their support for Anakin and Malgus. Their forces were only growing as they took control. War had erupted around the galaxy once again. Many of the Sith stayed loyal to the Dark Council, who engaged Malgus' empire directly in battle. However, the Dark Council only lost more support as the Emperor stayed quiet. Malgus expected Emperor Vitiate to join the battle, but he remained secluded and left it all to the Dark Council. Even the Dark Council were worried. They were losing the war, yet it had seemed their Emperor had abandoned them. And little did they know, this was Emperor Vitiate's plan all along. He welcomed the war, as with this, Malgus would defeat the rest of the Jedi and a good chunk of the Sith forces around the galaxy, while he journeyed back to Zakul and completed his transformation from Emperor Vitiate to Emperor Valkorion and prepared his Eternal Fleet. The Eternal Fleet is a massive, automated navy built by mysterious ancient droid forges, and the fleet was commanded through the Eternal Throne, a force-sensitive control nexus that allowed whoever sat on the throne to direct the entire armada simultaneously. And after years of building up its firepower, it's almost time for Valkorion to reveal himself. 4 years had passed now since Malgus and Anakin declared themselves Emperors of the Galaxy, and they had control over 70%, the rest occupied by the other side of the Sith Empire and the Jedi's Republic. Victory would come soon. It would only be another year or so. Anakin and Malgus fought hard, their lovers by their side, and together, their brothers in arms, would soon rule the entire galaxy. However, their plans had to change when the Eternal Empire attacked. Valkorion came out of nowhere, attacking over at Ilum, taking control of the false Emperor, Valkorion's old space station. The defending Imperial forces were taken out completely, including Darth Venomil, who was slain by Valkorion himself. This was a blow to Anakin and Malgus, and the loss of a dear friend enraged them. The Eternal Empire came with full force. Valkorion was supported by his 2 children, Prince Arcann and Vaylin. The Sith Empire engaged them directly, as the Eternal Fleet was commanded by Emperor Valkorion. He could command the entirety of his forces from his Eternal Throne, as Arcann and Vaylin led separate missions to further their takeover. However, in their conquest, the Sith Empire had captured the Silencer's super weapon, a gigantic energy cannon platform capable of vaporizing enemy fleets in a single volley, and the Sun Razor, a previous Republic super weapon that harnessed star plasma and could destroy planets or entire fleets. This was key, since the Eternal Empire had a larger fleet they needed to make up for the deficit. The first victory Malgus and Anakin had was when they engaged the Eternal Fleet, attacking them on Corellia. They came in full force, led by Arcann, but the tide of the battle turned after the Silencer took out half of the Eternal Fleet. Anakin, defending the planet, knew this was his best opportunity. He flew to the Eternal Command ship himself with a few of his Sith warriors. They carved through the defenses until Anakin came into contact with Arcann himself. Their duel was intense, but Anakin was victorious and had successfully captured the son of the Emperor. Malgus arrived later that day after the Sith victory, and they began to question Arcann about the Eternal Empire and his father, but he didn't say anything. However, later that evening, they tracked an Eternal ship that had come out of hyperspace towards them. It was a cargo carrier, not a warship, so they allowed it to dock. Malgus and Anakin went to greet it, as from the ship walked a female warrior who claimed her name was Senya, mother of Arcann and Vaylin. Malgus and Anakin couldn't believe it, ready to fight her on the spot, but she proclaims she's come here out of peace, that she doesn't wish to fight, but to save. She tells the Sith she can free Arcann from her father's influence and bring her son to their side. The Sith were skeptical, but didn't sense any deception from Senya. They allowed her to come and see Arcann, who was surprised to see his mother. The last time he saw her was when she tried to flee from the Eternal Empire with his sister and brother. His brother, Treason. Arcann misses him dearly, and the pain of losing him at his own lightsaber blade is rooted deep inside of him. And Senya does her best to rid Arcann of this pain. They spend hours together. She forgives Arcann for what he's done, that he's only like this because of his father's influence. She tells him it's not his fault, and doesn't blame her for Treason's death, and that his father is to blame. She tries to persuade Arcann that there is good in him. All he has to do is let go of his father's influence. Arcann was persuaded by this. He enjoyed the feeling of his mother's love after years of her father's neglect, and after he accepts this, Senya slowly uses the Force to break the connection to his father in his mind, something he had to be open to, and through this, Arcann could now see how his father's influence, the years of neglect and manipulation, had turned him into what he was now, and he vowed to help his mother, stop his father once and for all, and save their sister Vaylin. The next day, Malgus and Anakin met with Senya and Arcann. They told them about the Eternal Empire, the details of Valkorion's rise to power in the unknown regions, but most importantly, how the Eternal Fleet is controlled via the Eternal Throne, in which Valkorion sits on in their control ship. This intrigued Malgus and Anakin, and completely changed how they viewed the war. The skirmishes around the galaxy no longer mattered. They're not going to change the outcome, as Valkorion can simply make new ships. The only way to end the war is to attack his command ship directly and take over the Eternal Throne. They come up with a plan on how to do this. The next day, Arcann travels back to the False Emperor, the space station where the Eternal Throne is located, with Anakin, Malgus and Senya in handcuffs. He walks into Valkorion's throne room, who had Vaylin by his side. Arcann proclaims that he's ended the war. He's captured the Sith rulers in his father's name. Emperor Valkorion stood and laughed, congratulating his son on his victory. He turned to Vaylin, and she starts walking towards the Sith. Valkorion taunts Malgus and Anakin, asking if they really thought they could challenge the immortal Emperor. He commands Arcann and Vaylin to execute all three of them, and Vaylin ignites her blade, ready to bring it down on her mother. But as she does this, Arcann pushes her back against a distant wall, knocking her unconscious. Valkorion's rage grew as Arcann turned to face him. He sent lightning at his son, who blocked with his lightsaber, and with his spare hand, released the handcuffs of Malgus, Anakin and Senya. Anakin and Malgus ignited their lightsabers, while Senya rushed to the unconscious Vaylin. She started using the Force on her mind. Years ago, Valkorion had implemented mental blocks in her mind, which resulted in her turning to the dark side. But slowly Senya started to overcome these with the Force and bring her old daughter back. Meanwhile, Malgus and Anakin, alongside Arcann, rushed the Emperor. This fight was legendary. The immortal Emperor Valkorion was extremely powerful, but so were Malgus, Anakin and Arcann, the three of the strongest Force users in the galaxy. Valkorion was forced to ignite his lightsaber, something he hadn't done in a millennia. But it was no use. Malgus cut off his hand, whilst Anakin thrust his lightsaber directly through Valkorion's chest, and his body slumped to the ground. Meanwhile, Senya had overcome the mental blocks in Vaylin as she snapped back to reality and her old self. She regained consciousness and hugged her mother, proclaiming she was sorry for all of it. The room stood in silence. Only Vaylin's tears accompanied their ears, until a massive whirlwind echoed in the throne room. They looked at Valkorion's body as it had begun to glow a light blue, and in all of a sudden, everyone in the room's vision was the same color. It remained this way for a few seconds, until they opened their eyes. Their minds had been transported into the mental and spiritual realm of the Force. They looked around. Malgus, Anakin, Arcann, Vaylin and Senya, all confused about what was going on. But they turned around, not only to see Valkorion, but his other previous forms, Tenebrae, the ancient Sith species form, and Vitiate, the galactic conqueror and Sith Emperor. Valkorion taunts all of them, stating that this was his purpose all along, to die by Anakin's blade, so he would be dragged into the mental realm of the Force. He turns and looks at Anakin, telling Skywalker he's been his prized possession all along, ever since he sensed his power one day at the Sith temple on Droman Kaas. He knew he must have his body and power for himself, but he had to be patient, waiting until Anakin had become strong enough in the Force for his power to be worthy enough of the immortal Sith Emperor. Anakin fell to his knees straight away as he felt Valkorion attempting to take over his mind. Malgus screamed for him to stop and rushed towards him, but the ancient Tenebrae form of the Emperor stopped Malgus, force pushing all of them away. Anakin was pulled into the air as Valkorion started to take over, but Arcann, Vaylin, Senya and Malgus look at each other. They unite themselves in the Force, knowing if they are to win this, they need to attack together. They rushed in unison at the forms of the immortal Emperor, but they couldn't get past his barrier of red Force energy. They stopped, grounded themselves as they reached out with the Force. Instead of attacking directly, they challenged the Emperor's influence over Anakin, combining their power to inhibit his takeover of Skywalker's mind. But both sides struggled with all their might. The Emperor's desire for ultimate power with Anakin's body, Malgus' desire to save his brother Anakin, whilst Arcann and Vaylin strove to stop their father. It was equal. Neither side had influence over the other, but Malgus called out to Anakin, begging him for his help, that with his strength, they could defeat the Emperor. Anakin barely heard the calls. He was in and out of consciousness. The richness to Valkorion's power was almost too much, the ancient nature of it. But he was Anakin Skywalker. He heard his master call to him, begging for his help as Anakin reached out with the Force. Feeling the alliance between Arcann, Vaylin, Malgus, and Senya. He added to it, pouring all of his might into the connection. The immortal Emperor screamed in despair as he feels his power overcome. He screamed that he is endless, that only the Force is his to command. But Malgus stood tall, proclaiming that in the end, he is nothing. They had done it. They overcame the immortal Emperor's Force energy and turned it back onto him, first turning his vitiate form to stone, followed by Valkorion, and finally, his original form when he was Tenebrous, turned to stone and was crushed into dust by Malgus's fist. The 5 of them were transported back into the physical realm in the Eternal Throne Room. They all looked around at each other. They had done it. Malgus proclaimed that the Sith Emperor was dead, and he would never rise again. With this, Senya took over control of the Eternal Throne and led their forces back into the unknown regions. Over the following days, she and Malgus came into agreement. The Eternal Empire would remain in their territory inside the unknown regions, and would never attack Malgus as long as he does the same. Malgus agrees with this, a thank you for the help in defeating the immortal Emperor, and with that, Senya, Arcann, and Vaylin head back to Odessen in Eternal Empire space. And with this, Malgus and Anakin had won the war. They had defeated the immortal Sith Emperor, and over the following years would wipe out the remainder of the Sith forces that opposed him, as well as the remnants of the Jedi Order and Republic. They had finally ruled through strength, and the Sith Empire governed the galaxy through dominance. After they had complete power, Anakin started a family with his wife, Aatroxa, and had children of their own, all of whom were Force sensitive. Malgus did the same with Alina, as both families remained and lived in the capital of Coruscant. Malgus and Anakin had overcome the infighting that had plagued the Sith for thousands of years. They treated each other as complete equals and had no ambition to overthrow the other. They truly were brothers, and their families would begin the foundations of the Sith Empire that would rule for the next few thousand years under the Malgus and Skywalker banner.